don't matter what your name is, share your story. We'll be waiting, yeah, for the haters, whoa.
Ready?
Ready.
Awesome. Welcome back, everyone, to For the Haters. Today's episode is one of deep culture, pride, purpose, and resilience. We're honored to be joined by Jenn Harper, an Anishinaabe woman, entrepreneur, and the visionary founder of CEO of Cheekbone Beauty. Jenn's story is not only one of breaking barriers in the beauty industry, but also of honoring Indigenous identity, giving back to her community, and building a brand with sustainability and social impact at its core. From navigating personal struggles to creating Canada's first Indigenous innovation lab, Jenn has shown what it means to turn pain into purpose and to never losing sight of who you are along the way. This conversation is about more than beauty. It's about representation, healing, and finding power in your roots. Let's get into it. Jenn, welcome to For the Haters, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I was doing some research, so I've been listening to your voice for a little bit, but I'm just excited to get to know you a little bit more. I know that people on this platform really come for just people's journeys, right? How did they get to these different places in life? How did they get through things? How do they continue to grow? First and foremost, could you just give us an insight to what your childhood was like, where you grew up, how you grew up? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So kind of all over the place. My mom and dad were young when I came into the world, and so they were together for the first 2 years. I was born in Thunder Bay, which is like a really northern part of Ontario. Well, it's not super north. It's on the Lake of Superior, but it's to me from where I am right now in southern Ontario, it's north. So Thunder Bay, then we end up in Toronto, and then my mom and dad separate, and my mom moves to the Niagara region. So it's a town called St. Catharines near Niagara Falls. And I grew up there with her. So grew up with a single mom and a mom who for sure now as an adult I recognize like had her own sort of entire issues and traumas. And then of course having my dad who's Ojibwe, Indigenous, learning of his whole family and traumas that were ensued there. So I really came with two parents that were so young and both probably not ready to bring children into the world. Now, as a parent, I just recognize how serious of a job that truly is. And to be honest, even myself as a parent, I look back and my kids are 22 and 19, but the mistakes you make, I just don't think you know, or I know I didn't, and I know my husband didn't. It's just such a serious job, and we were really screwing up a lot of people when you don't get that right in those early years. And unfortunately, both of my parents were raised in families both dysfunctional but in very different ways, and then they're trying to raise me. And so a lot of abandonment issues. I'm an adult and have been through years of therapy, and so I understand who I am today because of a lot of self-reflection. But abandonment issues, when your parents separate, I think they never recognize how really traumatizing that is on a child. And my mom moves to St. Catharines, my dad's in Toronto, and I did the back and forth visiting thing with him. But then at one point, in my very preteen years, he moves back to our family's reservation, which is like further than Thunder Bay. It's almost in Winnipeg on the border of Manitoba and Ontario. And I know now that that for me felt like such a huge part of my abandonment issues. And then my mom, when I was really little, she would go away to work and I would be left with babysitters or caretakers, or I don't like anyone who would be taking care of me. And it was always different. It's never the same people. And so serious abandonment issues from like my early childhood because of that. So a lot of dysfunction, even to the point where I think it's well over 10. I think I counted one time 10, 12 schools
Wow.
before, like by grade 12. Just constantly moved. And, I have a great relationship with my mom now, and thankfully she's done a lot of her own healing and recognizes that she grew up in a home with a dad that was in the Air Force. So she had no clue how
Devastating.
destabilizing
Yeah.
that is for a child to move like that, right?
Mhm.
And um yeah, and then in some ways like there's all of these things that are like, oh, children needs to, but I recognize things in my character that I can adapt quickly in a
Mhm.
situation. I know how to, if I want to be friends with somebody, I know I got to look for the things that they like. Like that really makes you turn into somebody, even as a small kid,
Yeah, absolutely.
figuring the world out too young. So, I mean, there's good and bad. And I constantly talk about this as a joke at Cheekbone that when you're a startup, it feels very traumatic. So I'm like all of my
Mhm.
employees when we share a lot of personal stuff, and I think everyone's grown up in a form of trauma, and they're like, that's why I feel comfortable here in this chaos, right? I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know if this is healthy for us, but this is what it is. Um, and when we talk about resiliency, and I think about what my parents lived through, them, and what their parents lived through, sometimes I think that uh, it does sort of build us into the people we become. And I really see it now because unfortunately for me, I think a lot of this is where my addiction to alcohol came
Mhm.
from, is that masking feelings, trying to be someone I'm not and figure out how to fit in when I didn't feel like I fit in. And my addiction there was a lot of resentment for both of my parents, and it took me a while to heal from that. And then now I can say they were doing the best that they had with what they had, and they didn't know any better. And
Mhm.
that's all you can expect from any human being. The unfortunate part is that when it's your own parents. But yeah, years of therapy to figure all that out, but definitely
Mhm.
traumatic. But lots of, even despite all of that, like my mom, like I have the confidence I do today in many cases because my mom did put me in these really tough situations. And she also, like, she is my biggest advocate and always has been, despite like just maybe not doing it all the way it should be, I guess. I don't know. Like, she has always made me feel like I could do anything. It's probably why I believe I can do anything in a lot of cases.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there's like so much love. I've always had food on the table, even though I knew we were really poor. And I know we were really poor, but when you're little, you don't know you're really poor. But we never went hungry, and my mom would always figure something out, even though there might be, situations happening. But I just see they were really just doing the best they could.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I speak with a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different stories and a lot of different traumas. One thing that I've noticed, especially over these past couple months of the people I've spoken to, is there's this common thread of just when we heal as adults and having that forgiveness for our parents, that we recognize that they were just people as well, is
Hmm.
just a huge part of our core of allowing ourselves to grow, allowing ourselves to just like become better and be like heal ourselves a little bit more when we start to look at them as people and not look at them as parents. And obviously with you going through your own journey of parenthood, it puts into perspective different places too. I know that you said you said that you were had a good relationship with your mother. Do you still have a relationship with your father if he's still around?
Yeah, he's still around, and it did take a long time because I didn't. It's funny how parents do this thing. Like, I always kind of blamed him in a
Mhm.
sense, and had, I think, a deeper resentment for him. And sometimes parents, unfortunately, parents that separate, I don't think they know that they're doing that. Sometimes some parents very well may know that they are, but the way my mom posed things, I was really blaming him for a lot of it,
Mhm.
and it wasn't necessarily true. And um, unfortunately, he had his own struggles with addiction. And so when I was 19, I remember a very vivid situation where he had completely overdrank, embarrassed me in front of my partner at the time, and I really ended our relationship and did not start speaking to him until in my mid 30s again. So that
Wow.
was like 15 years, 20 years until I saw him again, actually. And it
Hmm.
wasn't until my brother BJ's funeral that I actually saw him again for the first time in person after 20 years. And that was really tough because because of that, I didn't have a relationship with that entire side of my family,
Hmm.
right? My brother is the one. BJ, unfortunately, before he died, thankfully, because of, social media has some good features, he started reaching out and we both had little kids and he came to visit a couple times and thankfully I started rebuilding my relationship with him. But now I see like I missed the last years of my grandmother being alive and my kids meeting my grandmother
Hmm.
and aunts and uncles. And this is not my father's fault. This is all mine. I could have done that, but it's like when I cut that off, I didn't realize how serious that was.
Yeah.
And and I always hear that when people are like, "Oh, you have to have the boundaries." You do. I really believe that, especially with family members with addiction. Um, but I'm an extremist sometimes, and that's not always healthy, right? Like me just saying goodbye fully to my dad was me exiting an entire part of myself and then realizing on my healing journey much later in life that that robbed me of understanding my culture as much as I
Hmm.
could have. There was, yeah, so many things, but unfortunately, we do speak now and have a good relationship. We're not super close, but my dad is a very like reserved, very quiet person. Um, and I think we have probably the best relationship we could in this situation, but lots of love. And it's really interesting. He's like, I've never not loved you. I just maybe didn't know how to show it, right?
Hmm.
And having grown adults say that to you is really huge, right? It's almost like, oh, well, that's exactly like I got it when he said that to me a couple years ago.
Yeah, and a lot of the time it's, people showing love in their own way, and instead of it being the expected way that we think it should be, and it's finding the difference
Exactly.
between the two. If we go back to your childhood, how did your Indigenous identity shape your childhood, if it did so?
Yeah, so this is so weird to say. So, like, because my mom is white, she's like fourth, fifth generation Canadian with like Irish descent and I think a mix of like Scottish and English in there somehow too. But and my dad's like 100% Ojibwe. And so my mom, because I spent most of my time with her, was like trying to show me the culture,
Hmm.
but obviously just from completely wrong in a way. Like I know she would buy me like paintings and pictures and be putting and like try to find indigenous stories and tell them to me and stuff. But then the times when my dad was still living in Toronto and I would visit back and forth, I see now like he really was trying to teach me culture. After a family dinner, we always call that like a feast. And then you go into the woods and you give thanks and you give back to the land the things you've taken. And like getting little sachets, leather sachets from him with like rocks and other medicines and stuff in it. And he was always trying to teach me something with all of those things. And as a young person, I would be like, thanks, not understanding.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, like he was spending so much time trying to teach me culture. But when you're young, you just don't appreciate, I
Yeah.
think,
I mean,
those
I even
moments
see it as him trying to show you his own version of showing you love too, right?
1000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You've spoken, you just spoke to about your addiction. When did that start? What did that chapter of life look like, and what led to you eventually seeking to heal from there?
Yeah. So I think it started like, I think I have like I guess a twofold belief that we probably genetically are predisposed sometimes to addiction.
Mhm.
So I believe it. I was born this way. I really believe that because of genetics and trauma that has been passed on through generation. I believe I was more susceptible to being an addict. And at 10 years old, my friend at the time, were like in grade 3, and her dad used to make like home brew. And we were in her room and she stole one beer. And I just remember this vividly, that we like drank it, we shared it, and we were giddy. And I literally can still remember thinking, oh my God, I love the way this made me feel
Mm.
at 10.
Yeah.
And then through like high school, and then I didn't start drinking until probably high school. And it would be the typical high school, like binge drinking, partying on the weekends. And then really early on in my 20s, I really knew it was a problem. I could tell I couldn't control it after a certain point, but I was always so fun until I wasn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had lots of friends because I was always sort of the life of the party, but, ended up in the drunk tank several times, and people just loved to see crazy Jen. And I think that just became part of like my personality. But unfortunately, I know I remember like one time waking up from a party and just walking into the kitchen and seeing the alcohol in the morning and taking a sip because I knew that was going to make me feel better. And it did immediately. And I immediately, my brain was like, I think you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like at 20. And I didn't get well until I was 38. Um, and it got really bad between like 32 and 38. So in like 2009, I went into rehab for the first time. And then I went a second time in 2010. And then in 2014, my husband, who's still my husband, we've been now married, we'll be married for 24 years this year. He finally said, after all of these years of like multiple situations, whether it be a car accident and I shouldn't have been driving, or
Mm-hmm.
I've never had a DUI, but if I'm being 100% honest with everyone, a great shame is I probably should have,
Yeah.
right? Um, but there was a situation and it was just like he finally had enough and said it and threatened to take our children and be like, this is it. I am done if this doesn't stop. And I knew he was serious, and he'd never said that in the years of marriage in that
Mm-hmm.
we had been married. And so that was just such a vivid, wide open call for me. And many people have asked, like, how did you do it? I've always been pretty spiritual, and it was almost like, when you go, like, because of being in rehab and going through the AA, and, we talk about higher power, and I know I have a good relationship with God, and I just didn't believe. Like, it's really fascinating to me when I share this story with you, because I know I look at creation and I can see how powerful, like,
Mm-hmm.
this just like something is behind all of this. It is too beautiful. It is too perfect. It is too mathematically and scientifically perfect for like our earth to be in line with the sun, like this much perfection. Like, there's no way this just happened. So I really have a strong relationship with the creator of the universe, and I always have, but I don't think I really believed that this creator could help me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And on that morning, like on my literally hands and knees, I finally said, I believe. And as weird as that sounds, and I know it's like pokey to some people, but it was like, I, the, that day, it's November 26th, 2014, I've not craved alcohol since.
Wow.
And that is, if you meet people in addiction, they still struggle 20 years later. And I just feel so fortunate. I shouldn't say it never happened, because a big part of the story is, or my journey. It's like, I'm always say it's a story. I'm like, this really happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that, since that day, I didn't crave. And of course, went through withdrawal, like all of it. But then, like, you get sober for a day. And I hadn't been sober for a very long period of time since rehab in 2010. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would relapse really often, right? Like, I would try to go every Monday would be my thing, right? Like, it was so hard. And then that last year of 2014 was hell. Like, I was waking up, I couldn't function a day without, like, I was probably, if I didn't quit then, I would be end up dead. Like, that's how serious of it. I would be drinking in the morning and then throughout the entire day until I eventually passed out,
Mm-hmm.
and then wake up in the middle of the night and start drinking again. Like, it was horrible, that last year. And a week goes by and I was like a month. And I always describe this to people as like, and I've heard other people say this, like those early sober days, you feel like a literal rock star because you're like, holy cow, like how am I sober? Like it was like a limb to me. And it was amazing. It was so good. And then in June of 2015, my husband wins this big award at work, and they send us to New York, and like we're staying at like the Mansion Oriental, which is like this massive fancy hotel, and we're going to the Hamptons, like all of this New York stuff. And we're at this final big party at the end of the week, and it's a gala. And all week there was alcohol everywhere.
Of course.
And for the first time in 6 months, I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? Like I feel like I want to drink. Like it's like, and that was happening all week. I remember laying in bed at the hotel and I just felt like literally like someone was pushing on me and this weight of like, just drink, just drink. And I'm like, okay, like what's happening? And I'm talking in like prayer essentially to
Hmm.
God the whole time. Like, if this is over, like you're done taking care of this situation, because clearly you are. Like, what is going on? Like, I cannot do this on my own.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you straight up, Jen's gonna
Mm.
fail, and I'm over, and it's done. And I'm at this final gala on the Friday night before we're going home, and I see the server, and she has a tray of champagne and beautiful like champagne flutes, and I'm like, okay, like it's over. I'm gonna drink this and you're done helping me. Like, thank you for the 6 months. Paul's gonna leave and I'm gonna lose everything. I'm well aware of that, but I'm an addict. I'm not like, once the brain says you're doing it, you're doing it. Like, there's no stopping that part of addiction. Like, it's a brain disease. And I was like, it's over. I'm done. Made the decision. And the server walks over and she says, I'd love to offer you one of our gorgeous champagne mocktails this evening.
Wow.
And I literally got shivers up my spine. And for me, it was like the
Like,
creator of the universe saying, I will always have your back.
yeah,
You
like
never
a
have to worry.
huge
And
sign.
I've never had a craving since. Like,
Wow.
even in the most, like, and I've gone through a lot of crap over these last few years, like personally, professionally. And there's some days where like it's weird, like my solution to everything in life over many years was like, okay, I need a drink,
Mm.
right? Like, and there's been times where it's that thought comes in because that's how my brain operates, but immediately I would be like, oh, that's so gross. Like I would never do that.
Hmm.
So it's so, and I feel so fortunate because I know I could never do this on my own. And I know for me, no one will ever convince me that there's not a God that's helping me get through this, like ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much beauty and like behind that entire story, right? Like there's just so many lessons. I think that we become better versions and better people because of someone that we choose to spend our life with. And I think that in your story, there's a lot where your husband came into play as well, right? Like if you didn't
Mhm.
have him, if you didn't have your family,
I have an amazing family. Yeah. Like
yeah.
when you see an addict on the street, I have so much compassion
Hmm.
because I know people think they're making a choice to be there, and no one. I'm always like, in even if you were to say to one of them, they know they're choosing it, but in their right mind,
Hmm.
like their real self, before their trauma, before the addiction, they would never choose that. Like they would never make that choice. And I know in many cases, they just didn't have the right circle of people around them to love and support them. And I recognize for me, I have an amazing, like my mom was always there to pick up the pieces in the really
Hmm.
bad years, like take the kids and get out. And my husband always made it look like we had a perfect family life, which is, in many cases twisted, but
Yeah.
he was doing the best he could with the
To
situation, right?
protect you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When does that time in life come where you really start to try to find the roots, reclaiming your culture and the indigenous roots? Did they play anything in part of recovery or
Yeah. So I think my daughter was about, I think she was just about one when I really started to recognize I am not like I wouldn't have put it into these words, but I knew there was this big disconnect between the person who I present to the world and who I really am.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it was because I was missing the relationship with my dad, that entire side of my family, which is all of my Ojibwe and Anishinaabe roots, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I really saw that. And when I had my son, and my son is like, I would call him white facing. My husband's Italian, but my daughter is like a spitting image of me
Wow.
and looks like
Genetics are crazy.
our Ojibwe family. Yeah, like
Yeah.
she's the darkest in our family, and my both of my kids are like half Italian and half Indigenous, and then this Irish portion too, because my husband's a bit Irish as well. And so Fallon is super dark. Like immediately people know she's Indigenous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think seeing her come into the world also made me very aware of what kind of life she would have if I didn't become proud of who I was and where I came from,
Mm-hmm.
which is really interesting because you don't know how important that is until you go through a life where racism is impacting you. And so I just immediately started to think of like my childhood and teen years, and like, my drinking was always crazy. And I remember in high school, this guy saying, "Oh, you're just like a drunk Indian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what you're acting like." And I was so offended. Um, and it's just like all of those like stereotypical racist terms. Also, probably why it took me so long to get sober is because I didn't want to admit that I was a stereotype, right? Like
Of
at the
course.
same time. But for my daughter, when she was little, it was like that was where I was like, okay, I need my kids to see that I'm proud of who I am and where I come from.
Mm-hmm. And so, next up is like entrepreneurship, right? Like, were you creating during those times of addiction, or like did
No.
entrepreneurship start for you after you got clean and sober?
Yeah, completely. Like I have never even knew this would be a path. I didn't know it was a way to have a business. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
anything about entrepreneurship. I have lots of family members that do this, but I didn't even know the word or what it meant, kind of thing, right? And it only came after sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
So that sober date, November 26, 2014, January of 2015. I have the dream that was like kicked everything off for Cheekbone. And it was three native little girls, middle of the night dream, pop out of bed. And I don't remember my dreams very often. So I always think this is pretty crazy. Um, that I literally had, like, I look at this now and it's like, what kind of lunatic starts a business based on a dream in the beauty industry and was so competitive? Why would I do this? Because now I recognize it's just so hard. But that was the dream. Three native little girls covered in lip gloss, and woke up that night and I was like, okay, this is the next thing I'm going to do. And I'm also learning about residential boarding school system, and that both of my grandparents survived and lived through that. And no, I'm 38 years old, living in Canada. I am Ojibwe, literally, like, that I'm Indigenous, and I had no clue, zero,
Mm-hmm.
that this is literally what has, I think, been the catalyst of what has destroyed Indigenous families,
Wow.
was because of this residential boarding school system and the trauma that existed in those places, and then ensues, like became this generational trauma there, like up until now. And so many of our families and communities and our culture still faced tons of systematic racism in many, many ways, and it hasn't gone away. And I believe it started then. And it started, like, the truth is, colonization, this has happened since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
One group of humans finds something that they want, and they need to get rid of the people that are living there because they want that. In this case, it's the land. And we know the British just got really good at colonizing, right? Like that's so it's not that this is any worse situation. I never want to claim that than any one other group of people that have been colonized. But when you look at it, it impacts generations of families, and that's what it's done to mine.
Mm-hmm.
And the symptoms of this kind of generational trauma. So my grandmother, if you think about going to a residential school, she was beaten, she's punished, there's no love from a family member, parent. Her culture is being robbed from her, and she's a young person, like she's a child. And then she leaves and goes back to her community, has her own children. And I just recognize, if you're not taught how to mother, how to love, how are you supposed to give that to your children? So she herself starts to battle addiction. There's violence. And that is then passed on
Mm-hmm.
to all the generations until someone decides to heal. And I know my dad became an addict. Many of my aunties and uncles struggle with addiction. And my siblings, I've lost a brother to suicide. And I know many of us, including my brother BJ, who's died, we all struggled with some form of addiction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it hasn't stopped. And my goal is personally, like when you start to heal, you can't go back in the past and fix everything, but you can do your best to try to change the future
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully for future generations after that.
Do you find that yourself is like this? It's like a sandwich, like a parallel road that is like entrepreneurship and just culture, where you're learning as much as you can while building a business, or did one come before the other?
I feel like it's been a somewhat parallel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great an example of how I learned this. But then all those things that my dad was trying to teach me, it's like they're not lost or forgotten because they've come back up now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that kind of fascinating. Um, there's a lot more Indigenous writers that we're learning from. Like that wasn't even, it's interesting, like time and place, because when I was younger, even if I wanted to learn about that, those books wouldn't have existed by Indigenous authors like we finally see now. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like for us, by us, right? Like that's what a lot of marginalized communities wanted to see for so long, and it didn't exist. And we're finally seeing that. So, yeah, I think history and time is so interesting because even me starting Cheekbone, perhaps 20 years ago, would it be what it is if history wasn't playing out? If reconciliation wasn't a conversation, would
Yeah.
anyone care about the like, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
of
so it's
course.
kind of like maybe it all worked out and the timing was perfect.
Yeah. Like, how do you, as you continue to grow and find success, like, how do you find balance from that cultural authenticity, with trying to grow a mainstream brand?
Excellent question because I've really battled for a long time about do we continue to call ourselves an Indigenous brand? Like to
Mm-hmm.
compete, right? Like we all know the DEI stuff is like disappearing off
Yeah.
many corporations' websites. Like you go there and it's gone.
Yeah.
We personally at Cheekbone have taken screenshots of many just to say you once said this,
Mhm.
just to say you did the, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, because we know they'll disappear or have been. Um, and so is this what do we still do this? And the truth is, I feel like what's uniquely sets Cheekbone Beauty apart, and this is like me, and I could start talking about product and now in formulation and how we're different for hours. So I'll just try to do this as quickly as possible. But so the beauty space, we've had beauty, and then all of a sudden there was this clean beauty path, and everybody was like, well, there was something wrong. If it's not clean, there's something wrong with that stuff.
Hmm.
But now the clean space, what we've figured is this massive, lack of a better word, they call it a white space in the industry, is people have been paying attention to clean for so long, which meant it's safe for humans. What Cheekbone Beauty does so incredibly different than a lot of brands is we look at the ingredients list that I've personally studied and vetted myself and sourced from around the world, is that those ingredients are not only safe for humans, but the planet.
Hmm.
And many clean brands, that is not the case at all. All they care about is, yes, we can check a box that it's safe for humans, but there is known ingredients that are harming the earth,
Hmm.
dimethicone, isodiocane. Like, so these are known ingredients that impact our ecosystems in a negative way. And because of our indigenous roots, we feel it's just as important to protect the planet as it is the human,
Yeah.
right? It's this whole, we're in relationship with everything. And that's how we know where our culture is really embedded into the brand and why it should be, right? Like we have been known as like stewards of this land for thousands of years, pre-colonization. Like that was our job, and we took that seriously as Indigenous people. And as a brand, as Cheekbone Beauty, as this brand, we still take that seriously. And that's where I think we will always call ourselves an Indigenous brand.
Yeah.
And we're working on a book right now. Um, And the whole theme of it is at the end of not only like telling my story, the brand story, but it's really to define what this term Indigenous beauty means. So if you're in the beauty industry, the whole world knows Korean beauty is known for epic skincare. Like if you want the best
Mhm.
skincare, it's going to be Korean beauty. If you want Ayurvedic beauty, you're going to go to the Indian culture or like South Asia, right? Like that's where Ayurvedic beauty will come from. Like French beauty is perfumes and red lipstick. And so I want the world, when they hear the word Indigenous beauty, to know that that is synonymous with sustainability.
Mhm.
And we're working on this book to define that, and that's what separates us completely apart, and why I think our culture will never leave the brand.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, right? I come from, like, I have a business mind. I've been a part of startups. I'm always working, my hands are always in things. And I've been a part of a startup that targets a specific minority community. But when you put yourself in that box, it's really hard to grow. And I mean, money is power. So
Yeah.
it's like, you have to start considering, moving in a different direction sometimes, because you can help more people and give back to the community quite a bit more if you obtain more clientele that's outside of that indigenous community, right? So
Exactly.
it's really hard to find that balance and staying true to yourself, and it's a lot of pressure as a CEO to really just stick to that mission, but find, like, how do you break that barrier so that you can continue to do better for more, right? Like,
Hmm.
um
It's a lot of like I think in it still happens, but in the early people assumed we were making a brand just for Indigenous
yeah.
people. And so I think one line I love is like Lancome wasn't just made for French people, like
Yeah,
we're all using it, right? And
of
so,
course.
and I love big giant organizations like IKEA. Culture is embedded
Mhm.
in IKEA, in Hyundai, the car company. Like we know those cultures are embedded into those brands. It's in how they say the words of the brand, the names of like, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, and you go into IKEA, we're all saying words of like pieces of furniture that are literally from their culture, right?
Mhm.
So it's like we do the same thing at Cheekbone Beauty, and I feel like it's just been an education process.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere a really long time ago, and it really stuck with me that if you focus on that niche, as small as you might think it is,
Mhm.
the other people will come.
Yeah.
Almost like the you build it, they're going to come mentality. And we've really felt that. Like we legitimately know the majority of our customers, because we sell shade range,
Mhm.
and the majority of our customers fall in the fair shade range. So we know, and this is like it marries the demographic of the planet, if you will, because there's more fair shades, in particular here in North America. If we looked at the stats for Canada and the US, our customer is really falling in line with the demographics of the country.
Mhm.
And that Indigenous people are only 5% of our business, just like it's 5% of the population. So I find that to be interesting.
But yeah, I mean, it is. You also have an innovation lab, is that right?
Yes. So when I got into the industry, I don't come from this space. I was
Mhm.
selling fish. I worked in the food industry literally my whole career.
My head went. There's like a running joke. Like, my head went to goldfish, and like I don't even, like, I didn't think of like fish you ate. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Like right out of the ocean.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, legitimately. Like, and that had been my career. I was working with chefs my whole life. I had been in
Mhm.
hospitality for like a solid 12 years and then had children and nights. You're always working nights when you're in hospitality. So I was like, oh, to have a better work life and be home for my kids, I went into sales and marketing for food companies
Mhm.
and then seafood the last few years before having this dream about lip gloss. But everybody I know from the beauty industry literally has like a tenure at like L'Oreal or Estee Lauder, and
Mhm.
I'm in here with nothing. Um, but which is also interesting because we came in and we're doing things completely different, including building a lab, which most people don't do. But I really started out using private white label or private label, and that means you're just legitimately buying a lip gloss already made from somebody else, and you're
Mhm.
just putting our logo on it. I did that for a few months and immediately was like, anyone could do this. This is never going to be competitive. This is so
Yeah.
like so then I started going. But the truth is I had no money and needed to prove one if there was a market for this business idea. So that was the cheapest way to test it. And also then we started getting questions immediately. Customers are just getting so much smarter. And this
Mhm.
was, almost 10 years ago now. They would be like, "Where is this ingredient coming from? Where?" And I didn't have the answers and I felt like a fraud. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my goodness, like I don't know any." It was just like one day I knew nothing about this industry that I found myself in, and
Hmm.
I better figure it out or it wouldn't last. And immediately knew that. And again, then knew, oh wow, I'm going to need to find an investor and someone to fund this because I don't have the money to do that. And so I then set out on this path to like start making the products ourselves. And yeah, the Sustain lipstick was the first one, but just learning that too. Like now when we talk about ingredients and formulas and why ours are better more for people and planet is like just me truly spending the last 10 years
Hmm.
studying ingredients and how they react in environments and how, can you make a more natural product last longer? Like all these sorts of things. And so that's where the lab came in, where I get to personally, I had hired a few chemists over the years. We got a lot of funding for that. And when the funding ended, I literally had worked with them, so had trained and learned a ton from them and got to the point where we did a lot of our formulas and the projects were over. Um, and so I now can sit around in the lab myself and make and formulate and play with products and understand it. But
Wow.
it's like homeschooling essentially, but hiring the people in the early days because we found an investor and I was like, how are we going to be the best? Well, I fully believed that we needed to understand how to do everything, and that's how we started it. We're a lot more scrappy and thrifty as we've grown and realized, okay, um, we don't have to focus as much dollars on innovation right now because we made all the formulas.
Yeah.
Beauty's interesting. We made the baseline of our formulas. We have a lot of what we call projects or in dot product development right now in the back end. But those were all things we'd been working on for 5 years. And now it's a time of waiting and testing to see what we're going to bring into the world.
Hmm. I think it's really cool, just like the intention that's behind everything, right? Like, I can respect and value how being asked a question by a customer just triggered you into this like spiral, right? And I'm almost the same exact way. How do you take care of your own mental health and well being, right? Like, as you carry the weight of not only building this company, but advocacy
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So lots like I have a really regular daily routine, which is like wake up, pray, meditate, fitness, and like kind of like do that all over again every single day. Like it's the
Hmm.
same thing. Drink my water, try to eat green vegetables, get outside as much as possible. I feel
Hmm.
so connected um, when I'm in creation. I feel my best there. And I try to do that every single day and just go and do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's every week. We know this. Like even though healing is great, life still happens. And as mentioned, there's been a lot of hard things on the journey that
Hmm.
happened on the way. Losing my brother while I was sober, like I can't imagine still being in addiction and losing a brother. Um, how I would have handled that so differently. I'm so grateful to feel things now, like
Hmm.
life, like feel sad, happy, angry, all of it. I'm getting like it's tough. Like I have like I call my husband calls me fusy, and I felt like I had such a solid few years in early sobriety where I felt more calm, and I don't know what's happening in the world. I think it's after the pandemic where or someone's telling me it could be menopause because I am going to be 50 next year. Um that I fly off the handle. It's like really, really bad. So not in a crazy way, but I'll always be like, someone will say something and I like just jump. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I was like, who is that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that I'm trying to figure out like how do we calm that Jen down?
Mhm.
But like it's life and it's hard and there's like it's just always hard. And I tell my two kids and it's just real. It's just like life is not going to get easier. You're just going to get stronger. And if you don't,
Mhm.
that's when it'll be harder and even more trouble. So like let's focus on building that tenacity
you
level.
get stronger and you get smarter, right? Like things,
Yes.
and you get smarter about your own emotional balance of like what you allow to like carry weight to you, and
Yeah.
navigating life gets, while life tends to get harder, but like you're able to, to get through things in a different, more mature way, as long as you're growing, right? Like as
Yeah.
long as you're learning and
Yeah.
learning what value, and what morals stick to your journey.
And it's okay to have a bad day. Like it
Yeah.
really is, because we're not perfect. Like,
Uh,
and I think that's the hard part. Is sometimes I feel like because I'm a mom of kids that are older, I think sometimes if they mess up, they feel like it's completely over. And I'm like,
yeah.
no, no, like it's a mistake. You
Yeah.
made a mistake. You
One
just got to get up.
One thing I really value about having conversations like this with people is I grow a lot from each conversation I have with someone, just by something they say. And you've already said a bunch of things throughout this episode that are just being added to my mental notes. But my wife is pregnant and we're about to welcome our first child
Oh,
in,
congratulations.
and so just hearing just different aspects of what motherhood has meant to you has been a large chunk of what's being put back there.
Mm.
So I really value you kind of opening up
Yeah, I
about
didn't mean to
that.
scare you. It's
Oh,
like,
I'm not
but
scared.
it is the most serious
Yeah,
job
no,
you're going to get.
I'm not scared. I
Yeah.
have been through life. I'm not scared at all. I'm excited more than
I
anything.
bet.
So,
Yeah. Aw.
I'm curious if, if success, what does success look like to you today? And like, how does that
Mm.
change from what success used to look like 10 years ago?
Oh, wow. I feel like for sure it was always about like material things,
Mhm.
right? Way back when because I was a broken person, and broken people are kind of materialistic, I think.
Yeah.
In many ways, because the world throws that at you, that's what success is. And then you get some stuff. Because I was really, even though I was an alcoholic, I did really well in my career. And it's just you realize those are never the things that are going to make you happy.
Hmm.
Um, just, being around your family, your kids, um, your partner, like they just are the ones where you really get those good feelings of true happiness and joy. And it's never perfect, it just comes in pockets. But I think success is just being able to be content. But like it's contentment is interesting because you got to be satisfied and happy with what you have. But I fully believe in still striving and working hard
Hmm.
to take the business to the next level,
Yeah.
to take your personal life to the like whatever you need to do. But it's that place of contentment, and it's kind of this magical place because sometimes you get there and you're like, oh, is this it? Is this what it feel like?
Yeah.
Um, and then also trying to balance out like, uh-oh, is this my, because if I'm being truthful, I tell people Cheekbone's successful because I worked really hard, but also I really made this my new addiction, right? Not alcohol. There's a great book I read called The Power of Habit by Dr. Charles Duhigg in my early days of sobriety. And it talks about how you have to replace the addiction. And so Cheekbone has really replaced the alcoholism. It's gotten more balanced over the years, but I certainly was working way more, and I still do, than ever, but I love it.
Hmm.
And that's I think, and this is obviously a healthier addiction than alcoholism. Or and it could not be too. It could also shift. So I'm very careful. But happiness is that, I think, that golden little pace of contentment you can get to, but where you're still growing and recognizing, but that it's like those moments that are in there.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that because I think that my success is starting to happen right now for me. I'm 34. I'm in a really good place in my corporate career. I'm working on a lot of side projects. I have a lot of really great things going. But I think that it's because, I tell myself if my life was lived every day for the rest of my life like it is today, like I would be happy. I have a beautiful wife, I have a beautiful family.
Oh,
Like everything about my life is great. But that doesn't stop me from wanting more. But knowing that right now
yeah,
is okay. Like I'm content. I'm content with my life.
yeah.
But it doesn't stop me from continuing to pursue other opportunities and strive to do better. So there's just so much power in contentment, and I think that often people like take that word and put it with something like you're content and you're just like not doing anything. But
Yeah, or like think I was like, what do people get this mixed up with? Are they like thinking it's just like you're lazy or
yeah.
something, right? And it's like, no, it's not that. It's like you're really satisfied
Mm-hmm.
with the moment.
Yeah.
And should this ever be it, great.
Yeah.
Because how unfortunate would the feelings be like that it wasn't,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like this moment, you like with my family, my kids, the way that like if I thought it wasn't, then that's not good either, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, me 10 years ago, this is everything I dreamed of, what I have now.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
your dreams just kind of change, right?
yeah,
Consistently.
yeah.
So, what's next for you? What's next for Cheekbone?
Oh, wow. So we are just really honestly trying to become a profitable business.
Hmm.
I've said this for like, it's so hard to find. So I've learned so many things. Didn't go to business school, was not an entrepreneur. I didn't have close family members that taught me the ropes of operations and inventory management. And I really recognize now we may say we're in the beauty industry, but we're technically in this operations inventory management industry. And if we do not nail that,
Hmm.
we will not have a successful company. So my business, Jen, is like, let's get this figured out. And then, we have strategy to think about the future and how far we want to grow. But like, we have to get this portion figured out before we can go and do any of that. But I've always said I want to be a global brand. I want Indigenous people around the world to know that someone like them from one of their communities built a brand that's a recognizable mainstream beauty brand. So the aspirations are huge, the goals are huge, but the real life day to day is like, I want to build this so it's a real functional
Hmm.
company, like so that the spreadsheets all make sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I'm a process person, so I value operations. And so
Oh, it's really
it
hard.
is. It is. It's a wild, wild west in a lot of places, and it makes you respect and appreciate just how great some businesses have figured it out to be able to do
Yeah.
what they're doing.
Totally. And it's the big companies. This is what I now know. I'm like, oh, wow. In their startup days, they had the operations person there
Yeah.
because you would have had to. That doesn't happen by itself.
Hmm.
And I feel so, I shouldn't say this, but like, I'm kidding. I know I'm not dumb, but sometimes I'm like, how did I not get that? I was like, just like this vision of a beauty brand and, da, 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 and now I'm like, oh my goodness, I needed to know. I needed to go know exactly where these 1,000 of this minimum quantity that I needed to buy from this partner who's putting it together for me, that I needed to have a distribution plan before I even put that order in for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Anyway, so that's just to give you an idea of where we are
Yeah.
in the sense, but it feels finally like 2025 the distribution channels are just coming at us
Hmm.
hard and heavy, which is great because we needed to figure out how to work. We do a lot of pencils, and there's only two countries in the world that make the pencils the way we want them to. It's our partners in Italy, and so you can imagine uh, these people are in demand, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they do things sustainably. The wood that they source, we've been their partner now for I think 5 years, and I go there every year, and we don't want to lose them, but we are so small in terms of the customer we are, and the
Hmm.
minimum quantities are heavy. So we're just like, and they keep going up because they're
They're
so
growing.
sought
Yeah.
after. Yeah. So anyway, that is a challenge, but we'll figure it out.
That's always the struggle. Where can listeners find you and learn more about you?
I am Cheekbone Jen on like the socials,
Mhm.
like LinkedIn, not LinkedIn. I'm Jenn Harper on LinkedIn, the professional one, but
Mhm.
Cheekbone Jen on Instagram and TikTok, and we're Cheekbone Beauty on all the socials. And yeah, we're always there. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to connect and ask away.
I love that. I have two more questions for you.
Yeah.
First being, what's one message that you hope people will walk away with after hearing your story?
Mm, that nothing is impossible.
Mhm.
Um, And then the first step starts with believing in ourselves. For me, whether that was the sobriety journey or believing I could be the one to start this brand that had no experience in the beauty space, but I like my gut knew that this was the brand that needed to exist, and that belief, so self-belief, nothing is impossible, is really real.
And my final question for you is, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
If I could tell my younger self anything, oh, wow. There's so many things that we think matter and we get caught up in doesn't matter. Like, I feel like that. And then one thing that I love to share with young people, especially, so this will apply, is this idea of consistency. Like, I feel like I don't have any great skill. Like, I'm not like, oh, Jenn Harper was the best makeup artist in the world, and that's why she's a makeup founder. Or like, she was the best at like formulating. I didn't know any of these things. And now I can do both of those things, right? Makeup artistry and formulation. But every day since I had that dream of Cheekbone Beauty, I've consistently done something to push Cheekbone Beauty and that brand forward. And it's just basically compound interest, right? Like, just consistency. And I think it's so underrated, but we all lack patience. And I'm now 10 years into that. So that's where the truth is, right? It's just over time, and give yourself time.
I love that. Well, Jenn, thank you so much for sharing your truth, your mission, and your incredible journey with us today. Your dedication to honoring your heritage and empowering Indigenous youth through Cheekbone Beauty is beyond inspiring. To our listeners, let this episode be a reminder that identity is a strength and a purpose can be found in even the hardest of beginnings. If you're dreaming of doing something bigger than yourself, this story is proof that you can. We'll be back next week for another powerful story. Until then, stay kind, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on For the Haters.
Yay! Thank you.
Thanks for listening to For the Haters. Don't forget to connect with us on socials, follow, like, and share to help more people find this community. And remember, they're not alone. And if you haven't yet, join our Facebook group. We'd love to have you there. The more we grow, the more lives we can impact.
What's your name?